Good evening from St. Peter's in Hove. It's my day off, that's why I'm not wearing my dog collar. We've been going step by step through St. Mark's account of the Passion, which is chapters 14 and 15 of his Gospel. What I'd like to do now is look at the whole thing together, not just step by step, but the whole journey we've taken. If you look at St. Mark's Gospel, which is 16 chapters, it's a bit like a photograph album. Here is Jesus with the daughter of Jairus. Here is Jesus with the Gerasene demoniac. Here is Jesus calling his first disciples. Here is Jesus with the woman with the issue of blood. Here is Jesus telling the story about the sower going out to sow, and so on. It's a bit like going through a photograph album and pointing to various pictures and seeing each one as a separate vignette. And we're used to this, that it's a series of episodes and each episode is self-contained, because we're used to hearing the gospel read out in church and each reading is self-contained. A reading from the Gospel of St. Mark. Yes, that's true. Well, what about the rest of the gospel? The reading is taken from the Gospel of St. Mark and therefore it becomes freestanding. But the way the Gospel of St. Mark is written in the first 14 chapters is more or less lends itself to that. You take each episode, each incident. It's a series of incidents. It's a series of episodes. In fact, it's overwhelmingly a series of miracles with a bit of teaching, and a bit of a few parables thrown in. But it's about, I can't remember how many miracles there are in St. Mark. It's something like 24 or something. Anyway, rather a lot of miracles. But when you get to the Passion narrative, there's a change, because the Passion narrative is not a series of self-contained episodes. It is a continuous, joined up narrative. That's why we call it the Passion narrative. It is a long story. It's not just a snapshot or a series of snapshots, though we can see it like that. Jesus before Pilate, Jesus before the Sanhedrin, Jesus is mocked, Jesus is scourged, and so on and so forth. Jesus is crucified. In fact, it's a developing story. It's a story that should be seen as a whole. So that's the first thing we need to look at. What is the story? The story is how the Son of God finds himself the innocent victim of our redemption, the innocent victim offered for our redemption, who is set upon, persecuted, and judicially killed by his enemies, the Pharisees, the chief priests, and the Romans. And nobody tries to stop it. So that is the first thing, how all these adverse forces close in on Jesus and destroy him. Except in the 16th chapter, he rises from the dead. In other words, there is what film directors would love to call a reversal of fortune. In other words, the very thing they wish to avoid, his enemies bring about. Now, the 16th chapter is just 8 verses. And because it's the 16th chapter, we think, oh, well, it's sort of freestanding. It's not. It's part of the Passion narrative as well. Because don't forget, these divisions into chapter and verse were not done by St. Mark. They were done by somebody much later for the ease of the reader. Just like your Jerusalem Bible or whatever Bible you're using has little headings over each episode. And St. Mark didn't write episodes, he wrote something that was actually joined up. The episodes are labeled, if you like, to make it easier for you to read. So the whole story is what we need to consider. And also the whole story is the destruction of Jesus, followed by his resurrection, which represents the destruction of his enemies. So the defeat of Jesus, followed by his victory. This, of course, is quite an important thing for us to grasp. We are very much, as Saint Paul VI said, un pugno di vinti. Saint Paul VI, when he was asked, he said in one of his more gloomy moments, of which he had rather a few, I suspect, he said that by the end of the 20th century, the Christians in Europe will be a bunch of defeated men. Un pugno di vinti. We are a bunch of defeated men in that everywhere Christianity is in retreat, everywhere Catholicism is in retreat. We are very much like those disciples who hid away while Jesus was suffering on the cross, who ran away and then hid, or like St. Peter, who denied him because we didn't hide, but we wish we had, or we're like those women watching from a distance. We are un pugno di vinti, but it's the darkest hour. And just as the women walk to the tomb, they get a big surprise when they get to the tomb. So we have a big surprise ahead of us, because after this darkest hour will come the glorious dawn of the resurrection of Christ. The church will revive. I believe that very strongly. So that's one of the first lessons of St. Mark's Passion considered as a whole. And I'll be doing this for the next few evenings. Okay? So do not feel defeated, for Christ has won the victory. Good night.